All right, so I'm going to show you today how the Thomson and Millikan experiment worked to show that an electron existed and what the charge and mass of the electron is and how those experiments worked. So in the Thomson experiment was used to prove that actually a negative particle existed. And the way Thomson did this is he had basically a glass container where he had a cathode and an anode, and they were both connected to a thing with high voltage. And when you turn the voltage on, the cathode would emit these particles and go through a hole in the anode, and they would go, and then they'd hit they would start to produce light, and usually that light would just go straight. But in this experiment, what Thomson did is he put a negative thing up here and a positive down here. And so what happened when he did that is he didn't know what these particles were, but the electrons, which we now know are negative, this is positive and this is negative. The light, or the particles, which were basically light, would bend towards the positive direction because they were negative. And so that's how he learned of the electron. And also he learned that the electron was a lot lighter than the than what was previously thought. Like the particle was not as big as a proton or a hydrogen atom. And so this was a surprise because the electrons deflected a lot more because they were a lot lighter than expected. Now for the Millikan oil drop experiment, it was basically, it's a little bit hard to explain, but there were two plates, and those two plates were hooked up to a positive and negative charged thing. And based on the oil drops, which were negative, and how they moved through these two, the Millikan was able to describe, or was able to figure out what the charge of the electron was, and like the mass, and kind of how big it was exactly. So because these were negative, the oil drops, when they fell through this initial hole in this plate, when they charged these two plates up, this plate became negative and this plate became positive. The oil drops would, instead of falling down like they're supposed to because of gravity, they would stay suspended in the middle because the positive was kind of pulling them back up rather than the gravity pulling them back down. So that's how the charge of the electron was exhibited in this experiment.